First post, 5th of February 2024, Dragon's Embrace, local resentment is sparked by China's growing presence in Nepal. China supported and founded the Communist Party, an insurgency that now rules Nepal and has subjected its people to Chinese rule as part of her all-out assault. Relatively recently, relations between China and Nepal have improved commercially since 2015. Nepal referred to China as a friend for all seasons in 2016 and joined China's Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, the following year. Since 2018, Beijing has played a significant role in forming the Nepal Communist Party, NCP, and its subsequent influence on the NCP government, contributing to the growing Chinese influence in Nepal. Because of the infrastructure projects carried out under the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, China has become Nepal's most significant foreign direct investment source, overtaking Delhi as the country's top investor. This has given China's influence in the country's economy additional impetus. Even before 2015, Beijing's slow-moving, subtle influence, and meddling in Kathmandu politics was evident. According to a leaked audio tape, Krishna Bahadur Mahara reportedly negotiated an Rs 500 million deal with a Chinese individual in 2010 to obtain 50 MP votes for Maoist leader Prakanta. Mahara was then the second highest-ranking leader among the Maoists and faced a rape allegation in 2019. However, the evident Chinese influence and subjugation became apparent when Nepal's two largest leftist parties, the CPN-UML and the CPN Maoist Center, formed a new alliance ahead of the 2017 provincial and federal elections in Kathmandu. China reportedly backed this alliance to create a political system that would work in its favor. Following the signing of a Memorandum of Understanding, MO, on the establishment of friendly relations between the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, and the Nepal Communist Party, NCP, later in 2019, Beijing's influence in Nepali politics was further cemented by the party-to-party alliance between Beijing and Kathmandu. China used corrupt leaders in economically weak countries to make inroads in those nations, Nepal being a case in point, according to a 2020 Global Watch analysis report. As a result, the Chinese state can meddle in domestic politics to protect its long-term interests, as demonstrated by the penetration of Chinese corporations into these nations. The research also noted the rise in the personal wealth of KP Sharma Oli, the former Prime Minister of Nepal, credited with forging solid diplomatic relations with China. Furthermore, it is claimed that during his administration, Oli broke government rules to guarantee that Chinese enterprises were given necessary contracts, thus fostering corruption in the country of the Himalayas. It was revealed last year that Sher Bahadur Deyuba, the previous Prime Minister of Nepal, had a close cousin connected with Beijing in an armaments sale carried out without following the proper legal procedures and included 30% price inflation. Therefore, Chinese influence is believed to be pervasive regardless of political affiliation. In 2022, Balendra Shah, an independent, emerged victorious in the Kathmandu Valley municipal election. During his election campaign, Shah was frequently spotted at restaurants with Chinese journalists and embassy employees, and it is thought that significant Chinese support helped him win the mayoral contest. Targeting street sellers in Kathmandu, who make up roughly 62% of the country's informal economy, is also viewed negatively by the populace as part of his plan to clear the way for Chinese businesses to open shop in the valley. It is clear from this that Chinese influence has extended far beyond the highest levels of Kathmandu politics and has also impacted local politics. Chinese influence is present in Nepal's social, political, and economic spheres, growing through soft power. Nepal has embraced China's One China policy, and as such, journalists covering issues unflattering to China, such as the Tibetan issue, are discouraged from doing so. This has an impact on the free and fair journalism in the nation. An investigation was conducted into a journalist employed by the state-run Rashtriya Samakar Samiti to cover the Dalai Lama's release from a New Delhi hospital because the subject matter was deemed too sensitive. People were drawn to the strange death of Balaram Bamia, assistant editor of the Nepali daily Kanipur Daily, because it occurred just 1 month after he broke the news of China's border incursion in Rui village, which is located in Nepal's Gorkha province. Bamia was forced to apologize, as was Kanipur Daily. Bamia suffered brief suspension for covering this story, which other media later took upon for their inquiry, criticizing the then Prime Minister. Before this, 17 editors of Nepali media condemned the Chinese embassy in a public statement for menacing journalists and interfering with their work, impeding the free press's ability to operate without hindrance. To foster bilateral ties with newer dimensions, China organized a 3-month training program on Chinese language and culture for journalists from Nepal in January 2020. The Nepal-China Media Forum and the Confucius Institute of Kathmandu University co-sponsored the program. Beijing aims to make sure Nepali media refrain from reporting on stories that portray China unfavorably and instead advance Chinese understanding and opinion in Nepal. China uses this kind of normal diplomacy all around the world. Not only is Chinese language promotion reaching Nepali journalists, but it has also made its way into the country's educational institutions, which is a worrying aspect of Chinese influence. In 2019, it was claimed that Mandarin instruction has become required in many Nepali schools, with Chinese language instructors' salaries being covered by the Chinese embassy. To increase the use of Mandarin in public institutions, Nepal's Ministry of Education and the Chinese embassy also inked a Memorandum of Understanding in 2019. On the ground, though, not many parents of these school-aged children have expressed gratitude for it. However, as of 2023, Kathmandu University's Confucius Institute had trained nearly 50,000 Chinese language professionals in Nepal since its founding 16 years earlier. This fact alone reveals China's soft dominance in Nepal. As mentioned, China has been using soft power to maintain its hold on Nepal. Still, it has also engaged in border violations, particularly in the country's northern border, including the smuggling of drugs, people, and wildlife, as well as fraud and abusive trade practices. Beijing's salami slice policy has led to the Chinese incursion of 150 hectares of land in 5 districts of Nepal, including Humla, according to an investigation by the UK's Telegraph. It was also claimed that Beijing had built about 9 buildings in Humla as part of its incursion. In 2022, reports surfaced of 36 hectares of land being infringed upon at 10 locations along Nepal's shared northern border with China, indicating that border violations were still occurring. More than 7 of Nepal's 15 districts, Dholaka, Gorkha, Darchula, Humla, Sindhupalkok, Sangkhawasa, and Rajwa, that border China were affected by these encroachments. China conducted surveillance in addition to its territorial invasions. Nonetheless, the officials' silence clarifies their determination to preserve their tight relations with their large neighbor, even if it means going against their sovereignty. There are not only land incursions but also cross-border transit problems with China at the 2 international borders Nepal shares with China, Karung Rawagati and Tatopani Zangmu, also called Khasa. Following the 2015 earthquake in Nepal, the Tatopani border, which had served as the 2 nations' mainland commerce route since 1967, was closed. As a result, Nepali business people had to turn to the Karung Rawagati border, officially acknowledged as the Nepal-China border in 1961, as an alternative route for importing Chinese goods. But Beijing's stringent zero-COVID policy and total border closure devastated the livelihoods of Nepali traders and caused enormous economic losses for the landlocked nation. Despite the reopening of the Karung border in December 2022, there was a slight improvement in Nepali commerce. Every 2 weeks, Chinese imports into Nepal effectively created a trade embargo. China shuttered its borders less than 30 days after trade resumed. China's suspension of Nepali exports meant that the reopening of the Tatopani border in May of last year had no positive effect on the freight movement for Nepali traders. To the chagrin of Nepali traders, China once more arbitrarily closed the border, restricting trade on this border for various reasons. Beijing has a significant trade deficit with Nepal due to its superiority in trading relations with Kathmandu, which has caused trade issues for the nation. China's BRI document recently disclosed, the 2017 Mo on Free Trade Connectivity, that Beijing is seeking to impose its economic hegemony on Kathmandu, use its currency there, and export Chinese goods through zero customs. This agreement was never made public. China's zero-COVID policy and border closure have had a significant negative impact on Nepal's tourism industry. However, Chinese tourists who came to Nepal after the border restrictions were loosened were discovered to have made hotel reservations and purchased at Chinese-owned stores. According to DOI data, 63 Chinese businesses have registered with the Department of Industry, DOI, to run hotels and restaurants in Nepal. The tourism industry in Nepal, which significantly impacts the national economy, is not being boosted in any manner by Chinese visitors. The locals view the Chinese investments in Nepal that were supposed to revive the country's flagging economy with suspicion. Numerous projects agreed upon by the 2 nations have not materialized and are constantly postponed. The Trans-Himalayan multimodal connectivity system between China and Nepal is essential and intended to turn Nepal from a landlocked to a land-linked country. However, according to a Nepali online magazine, Beijing primarily targets these Chinese projects and trade deals to demonstrate its power in the nation. At the same time, the local Nepali populace is at risk of seeing a rise in unemployment due to the growing Chinese immigration. In addition, Beijing's surveillance, combined with this influx, forces Kathmandu into even more corruption. Concerns about potential national security breaches in Nepal have been raised by the recent 5G testing by Chinese telecom company Huawei, notorious in that country for its bribes and covert operations, including a lack of international openness. Constructed using a $215.96 million loan from China's Exim Bank, the Pokhara International Airport was opened last year and hailed by China as the flagship project of the BRI. However, several issues quickly surfaced, drawing attention to the airport. Unfortunately, shortly after the airport opened, a Yeti Airlines flight crashed while attempting to land, revealing that it could only handle smaller planes. This prompted worries about the airport's capacity to draw in traffic and frequent international flights. The Pokhara Airport construction project awarded to China's CAMC Engineering was reported in the New York Times as falling short of international standards. To enhance its commercial interests, the CAMC overstated the project's cost, undercutting Nepal's efforts at quality control. There is increasing fear that the airport, which has to pay Beijing $3.2 million in interest each year due to its poor operation, may suffer the same fate as Hambantota in Sri Lanka. Kathmandu requested that Beijing turn the loans into grants to lessen the financial strain, but Beijing refused. China's presence in Nepal is a prime illustration of how the dragon's embrace may soon transform into a curse obfuscated by investment. With all these problems, Nepal's think tanks have consistently expressed worries about responsibility, intent, liability, and Chinese meddling.